Earth defies the Galactic Council. The invasion. Fails. The massive ship hung in space like a crystal cathedral, its transparent walls catching starlight and throwing it back in rainbow patterns. Inside the command center, beings from 12 different worlds stood around a holographic display showing a small blue planet. They had been watching this world for 3 months now, and what they saw made them afraid. Vexithara moved closer to the display, her crystalline body chiming softly with each step. As High Arbiter of the Galactic Council, she had seen many worlds, but this one was different. The creatures on this planet called themselves humans, and they were unlike anything in the known galaxy. "Show me the latest reports," she commanded, her voice like wind through crystal caves. The hologram changed, showing images from the planet's surface. Cities stretched across continents filled with millions of these bipedal creatures. They moved in patterns that seemed chaotic but somehow worked. Their vehicles raced along ribbons of stone while metal birds carried them through the sky. "They fight constantly," reported Zektar, the military commander. His forearms gestured at the display where red dots marked conflict zones. In the past month alone, they have engaged in 47 separate wars. They battle over resources, ideas, invisible lines they draw on maps. They even fight for entertainment. Vexithara studied the data streams flowing around the planet. The humans had discovered radio waves only recently, yet they filled space with their chatter. Music, news, arguments, jokes, an endless stream of noise that made no sense to ordered minds. "They have nuclear weapons," added Dr. Kethra, the science advisor. Her green skin flickered with concern patterns. "They built them barely a century after discovering electricity. Most species take millennia to develop such power, and they use it wisely. These humans have thousands of these weapons, all pointed at each other." The assembled representatives from 12 worlds murmured in their various languages. The Althani clicked their mandibles nervously. The gas-dwelling Vorthak pulsed worried colors through their containment suits. Even the ancient keepers, who rarely showed emotion, rustled their leaf-like appendages with unease. "There is more," Zektar continued. "They have no unified government. Instead, they divide themselves into nearly 200 separate nations, each with its own laws and customs. They compete for everything: trade, territory, even the right to host sporting events. Yet somehow this chaos produces rapid advancement." Vexithara moved to another display showing human technology. In just the past 50 years, these creatures had gone from horse-drawn carriages to rocket ships. They had split the atom, decoded their own genetics, and built machines that could think, all while fighting each other. "They are dangerous," she declared. "A species this aggressive and unpredictable cannot be allowed to develop interstellar travel. They would bring chaos to the ordered galaxy." The Council had faced such decisions before. When a species showed potential for galactic disruption, they intervened. Sometimes this meant gentle guidance, helping young civilizations find peaceful paths. Other times it required stronger measures. "What do you recommend, High Arbiter?" asked Elder Morden of the Keepers. Vexithara's form brightened as she accessed the Council's historical databases. "We offer them a choice: submit to galactic governance and accept behavioral modification, or face annexation. We have successfully guided 47 species this way. None have refused. The decision was unanimous. The humans would be given one chance to join galactic civilization properly. If they refused, the Council would take control of their world for the greater good of the galaxy. The first challenge was making contact. Humans had not yet developed faster-than-light communication, so the Council sent a small diplomatic vessel to Earth's solar system. The ship, barely larger than a human building, approached the third planet while broadcasting peaceful intentions in every language the humans used. The response was immediate and typically human. Military forces from every major nation scrambled to intercept the vessel. Fighter aircraft, missiles, and even hastily launched space shuttles converged on the diplomatic ship. The pilot, a nervous young Althani named Clichter, sent increasingly frantic messages about peaceful contact, while human weapons locked onto his ship. When the humans finally allowed a meeting, they could not agree on where to hold it or who should attend. The Americans wanted it in New York. The Russians insisted on Moscow. The Chinese suggested Beijing. The Europeans formed a committee to discuss forming a committee to decide. Eventually, they settled on a neutral location, a space station hastily built in Earth's orbit. Representatives from every human nation crowded into the small structure, all talking at once in dozens of languages. Clichter's translator nearly overloaded trying to process the chaos. Ambassador Vexithara arrived in person, her crystalline form glowing softly in the station's artificial light. The humans fell silent for perhaps the first time in the meeting, staring at her alien beauty. "People of Earth," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the station. "I am Vexithara, High Arbiter of the Galactic Council. We have observed your species and find you remarkable." The human representatives leaned forward, excitement and fear mixing on their faces. "Your advancement is unprecedented," Vexithara continued. "In a few thousand years you have built a complex civilization. However, we are concerned about your aggressive tendencies and chaotic nature. Left unchecked, you could destabilize the peaceful order we have maintained for millennia." The humans began to speak at once again, but Vexithara raised a crystal hand for silence. "Therefore, the Council offers you a choice. Join us willingly, and we will guide your species to peaceful coexistence. You will receive advanced technology, longer lives, and an end to war and suffering. All we ask is that you accept certain modifications to your behavior patterns. Nothing painful, simply adjustments to reduce aggression and increase cooperation." The station erupted in argument. Some humans seemed interested in the offer. Others demanded to know what these modifications entailed. A few accused Vexithara of trying to control them. "And if we refuse?" asked Secretary General Martinez of the United Nations, his voice cutting through the noise. Vexithara's light dimmed slightly. "Then we will be forced to take control of your world for the safety of the galaxy. This is not a threat but a necessity. You will be treated well, but your independence will end." The arguing grew louder. Accusations flew between nations about who had brought this crisis upon them. Some blamed space programs for attracting alien attention. Others insisted they should fight regardless of the odds. "How long do we have to decide?" Martinez asked. 7 of your days, Vexithara replied. "We await your answer." As she departed, the humans continued their debates. Some nations called for immediate surrender. Others began mobilizing their military forces. A few tried to secretly contact the Council to negotiate separate deals. But slowly, something unprecedented began to happen. Despite their differences, despite centuries of conflict and mistrust, the humans began to unite. Not because they agreed on everything, but because they agreed on one thing. No one had the right to take away their freedom to choose their own path. When the 7 days ended, Secretary General Martinez stood before a hastily assembled United Earth government. Behind him, representatives from every nation on the planet waited. Their answer was unanimous. "We decline your offer," he said simply. "Earth will remain free." Vexithara received the message aboard her flagship. Around her, the largest invasion fleet in galactic history waited for orders. 10,000 ships from 12 worlds carrying weapons that could crack planets and soldiers who had never known defeat. "So be it," she whispered, and gave the command to advance. The invasion of Earth was about to begin. The Council fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, like a swarm of metal stars. 10,000 ships of every size and design spread across space, their weapons charging with the light of small suns. At the center, Vexithara's command vessel pulsed with confident energy. "Initial scans confirm the planet's defenses," reported Commander Zektar, his 4 arms dancing across control surfaces. "Primitive chemical rockets, basic nuclear warheads, and some form of directed energy weapons. Nothing that should pose a threat to our shields." The fleet began its approach, moving in perfect formation. Each ship knew its role in the coming battle. The heavy cruisers would eliminate orbital defenses. The assault carriers would land troops in major cities. The smaller vessels would mop up any remaining resistance. It was a plan they had used successfully on dozens of worlds. But as they crossed the orbit of the planet called Mars, something unexpected happened. The humans attacked first. From hidden bases on asteroids and dead moons, missiles erupted into space. Not the crude chemical rockets the Council expected, but sleek weapons that moved faster than anything the humans should have been able to build. They streaked toward the fleet like angry hornets, their nuclear warheads detonating in brilliant flashes against alien shields. "Impossible," breathed Dr. Kethra from her station. "Our scans showed no such weapons." "How did they build these so quickly?" Vexithara watched the tactical display as hundreds of human missiles struck the outer edge of her fleet. The shields held, but several smaller vessels reported damage. More disturbing was the realization that the humans had been preparing for this moment, building weapons in secret while pretending to debate. "It matters not," Zektar declared. "A few nuclear warheads cannot stop us. Continue the advance," but the missile barrage was only the beginning. As the fleet approached Earth, the planet itself seemed to come alive with hostility. Every human military installation that had ever existed suddenly revealed hidden capabilities. Radar installations became particle beam weapons. Communications arrays fired coherent energy bursts. Even civilian buildings opened to reveal missile launchers. The first real shock came when a flight of human aircraft appeared on sensors. They were small, angular craft that moved with surprising speed. The Council's fighter pilots prepared to engage, confident in their superior technology. Then the humans did something that defied all tactical logic. Instead of trying to dogfight or retreat when outmatched, they flew straight at the alien ships and rammed them. "What are they doing?" gasped Wing Commander Altherin as his pilots reported the impossible sight. Human pilots, knowing they faced certain death, deliberately crashed their aircraft into Council vessels. Some even ejected at the last moment, only to detonate personal explosives when they impacted the alien hulls. More human craft appeared from every direction, not just military fighters but civilian aircraft loaded with explosives. Commercial airliners, private jets, even antique warplanes pulled from museums, all flown by volunteers on suicide missions. "They are insane," muttered Dr. Kethra, watching the display in horror. "No rational species sacrifices itself like this." But the ramming attacks were just one part of humanity's defense. From Earth's oceans, submarines that should not have existed broke the surface. These were not the primitive vessels Council intelligence had catalogued, but massive underwater fortresses bristling with weapons. They fired everything from nuclear torpedoes to improvised railguns made from submarine hulls. The space around Earth became a chaos of explosions and debris. Human weapons, many clearly built from salvaged alien technology, struck Council ships with devastating effect. The aliens' advanced shields were designed to stop coherent energy weapons and smart missiles. Not the brutal kinetic impacts of ramming craft or the crude, but powerful human nuclear devices. "Sir, we have lost 200 vessels," reported Zektar, his voice strained with disbelief. "The humans are using tactics our computers cannot predict. They sacrificed 10 ships to destroy one of ours, and they seem to have an endless supply of volunteers." Bexathara studied the battle reports with growing alarm. The humans were not fighting like any species she had encountered. They showed no regard for the preservation of individual life, instead focusing entirely on causing maximum damage to the enemy. When their weapons failed, they used their ships as weapons. When their ships were destroyed, they used the debris as weapons. Most disturbing of all was their apparent joy in the fight. Council interceptors picked up human radio chatter filled with laughter, war cries, and what could only be described as enthusiasm for battle. They were not fighting out of desperation or fear, but because they genuinely enjoyed the challenge of defeating a superior enemy. "They are broadcasting music during the battle," reported the communications officer, a nervous Vorthak whose gaseous form flickered with confusion. One pilot sang an entire song while ramming a battlecruiser. The situation grew worse when the humans revealed their secret weapons platforms hidden throughout their solar system. Asteroids that looked natural suddenly opened to reveal massive railguns. Space debris turned out to be disguised missile pods. Even the human space station they had used for negotiations transformed into a weapons platform, firing everything from nuclear missiles to kinetic projectiles made from construction materials. But the most shocking revelation came when human ground forces engaged the Council's landing parties. The aliens had expected to face primitive soldiers with chemical weapons and metal bullets. Instead, they encountered humans who had somehow reverse-engineered captured alien technology in a matter of weeks. Ground troops found themselves facing human soldiers armed with energy weapons that bore a disturbing resemblance to Council designs. Worse, the humans had adapted these weapons in ways that made them more effective against alien armor. They had studied every piece of debris from the early skirmishes and turned it into new weapons. "How?" demanded Vexthera as reports flooded in. "How did they analyze our technology so quickly?" Dr. Kethra consulted her instruments, her green skin flickering with worried patterns. "It appears they have been studying our transmissions and sensor scans. They have thousands of scientists working around the clock, sharing information freely between their nations. Instead of competing for knowledge, they are cooperating to defeat us. The battle raged for 18 hours before Zektar made his recommendation. High Arbiter, we should retreat and regroup. We have lost nearly 3,000 ships and human resistance is stronger than our worst projections. They are not fighting like a rational species. Vexathara looked at the tactical display, where her perfect formation had dissolved into chaos. Human vessels swarmed between council ships like angry insects, striking at weak points and vanishing before the aliens could respond. Every minute brought new reports of impossible human tactics and improvised weapons. Very well, she said finally. Pull back to the outer system. We will study their methods and adapt our strategy. As the council fleet retreated, the humans did not pursue. Instead, they broadcast a message on all frequencies. It was not a demand for surrender or a plea for mercy, but something far more disturbing, a song of victory sung by millions of human voices. The aliens listened in stunned silence as the entire planet celebrated their retreat. These humans had faced the largest invasion force in galactic history and forced it to withdraw. Now they were singing about it. What manner of species celebrates wounded enemies instead of showing mercy? Wondered Elder Morden of the Keepers. Vexathara had no answer. In her crystal memory banks, she searched through records of 1,000 conquered worlds. None had fought like this. None had shown such creativity in their desperation, or such unity in their defiance. For the first time in her long existence, the High Arbiter of the Galactic Council began to doubt the outcome of a conquest. These humans might actually be more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The first battle was over, but the war had just begun. The siege of Earth began 3 days after the failed invasion. Vexthara's fleet formed a blockade around the solar system, cutting off any chance of human expansion into space. Council ships patrolled every route, their sensors scanning for human vessels trying to escape. If we cannot conquer them quickly, we will starve them out, Vexthara declared during a command meeting. No species can survive isolation for long. They will surrender when their resources run low. But the humans had other plans. Instead of waiting for starvation, they adapted with frightening speed. Within days of the blockade's establishment, human engineers were already at work turning their world into a fortress. Dr. Kethra watched the planetary scans with growing amazement. They are rebuilding everything, she reported. Civilian factories are being converted to weapons production. Agricultural areas are being turned into military bases. They are even digging underground cities. The changes were visible from space. Major cities that had been bombed during the first attack were already showing signs of reconstruction, but not as they had been before. Every new building included defensive features. Every factory was designed to produce weapons as well as civilian goods. Even schools and hospitals were being built with reinforced walls and hidden armories. Look at this. Dr. Kethra highlighted a section of the North American continent. They are connecting their underground rail systems into a vast tunnel network. They can move troops and supplies beneath the surface faster than we can track them. Commander Zektar studied the data with his 4 eyes, each focused on a different aspect of human activity. They are also salvaging our crashed ships. Every piece of debris from the battle has been collected and studied. They learn from every engagement. This was perhaps the most disturbing development. The humans had gathered wreckage from hundreds of council vessels destroyed in the first battle. Instead of simply studying the technology, they were adapting it to their own needs. Human scientists worked in teams, sharing every discovery instantly across their global communications network. The aliens had expected human morale to collapse under siege conditions. Instead, they watched in disbelief as the entire planet seemed to unite behind the war effort. Nations that had been enemies for centuries were now sharing resources and technology. Religious groups that had fought for millennia were working together to build weapons. Even human criminals were being recruited into the military. They have turned their entire civilization into a military force, Zektar observed. Every human is now a potential soldier. The truth of this became clear when Council forces attempted to establish landing zones on the planet's surface. They had chosen remote locations, far from major cities, thinking to avoid heavy resistance. Instead, they found themselves fighting farmers with improvised weapons. The first landing site was in a rural area of the continent called Australia. The assault troops expected to face scattered resistance from local police forces. Instead, they encountered ranchers who had turned their livestock herds into mobile weapons platforms. Cattle fitted with explosive charges were driven into council formations. Sheep carried sensor equipment to spot alien movements. Even the local wildlife seemed to have been recruited into the war effort. The humans have weaponized their entire ecosystem, reported Captain Morthak after his units retreat from the Australian outback. They use everything against us, animals, plants, even the weather. They redirect rivers to flood our positions and set fires to drive us into prepared kill zones. The situation was even worse in urban areas. When council forces tried to occupy major cities, they found that every civilian building had been turned into a potential fortress. Apartment buildings became sniper nests, shopping centers were filled with booby traps, subway systems had been converted into underground highways for human resistance fighters. But the humans' greatest weapon was their refusal to follow any predictable pattern. Council military doctrine was based on fighting rational opponents who valued the preservation of life and infrastructure. Humans seemed to value only victory, regardless of cost. They destroyed their own bridge rather than let us cross it, reported one ground commander. Then they used the debris to build a new defensive position. When we flanked that position, they blew up the entire district rather than retreat. This willingness to sacrifice everything for tactical advantage baffled the council forces. Their own species had evolved beyond such destructive impulses millions of years ago. The idea of deliberately destroying valuable infrastructure to deny it to an enemy was almost incomprehensible. Worse still was the humans' apparent ability to turn every setback into an advantage. When council bombardments destroyed their power plants, they built new ones underground. When their communications networks were jammed, they developed new systems using alien technology. When their military factories were bombed, they scattered production to thousands of smaller facilities. They are like a disease, muttered Elder Morden during a council session. Cut off one part and two more grow to replace it. They adapt faster than we can respond. The siege dragged on for weeks, then months. Instead of weakening, human resistance only grew stronger. They had learned to manufacture copies of council weapons using their own industrial techniques. Human soldiers now carried energy rifles that were crude but effective versions of alien designs. More troubling were the reports from council supply lines. Human raiders were somehow striking at bases throughout the solar system, using ships that appeared to be built from salvaged alien technology. These vessels were ugly and primitive compared to council designs, but they were fast and heavily armed. How are they reaching our supply bases? Demanded Vexthara during one particularly frustrating briefing. Our sensors show no human ships leaving the planet. The answer came from an unexpected source, a captured human pilot who had somehow infiltrated a council space station. During interrogation, he revealed that humans had been building hidden shipyards in asteroid fields, using materials salvaged from the first battle. You think we would just sit on our planet and wait to die? The pilot laughed. We have been spreading through your solar system since the first day. Every piece of metal you lost, we turned into a weapon. Every sensor scan you made, we used to learn about your technology. The revelation that humans had been secretly expanding their presence throughout the solar system sent shockwaves through the council fleet. Suddenly, every asteroid could hide a human base. Every piece of space debris could be a disguised weapon. The siege had become a two-way affair, with humans attacking council positions as often as they defended their own. Dr. Kethra's analysis of human behavior grew increasingly alarmed. They do not think like other species, she reported. Where we see problems, they see opportunities. Where we see defeat, they see new challenges to overcome. They actually seem to enjoy being outnumbered and outgunned. This became evident in the humans' radio broadcasts, which council intelligence monitored constantly. Instead of despair or calls for surrender, the airwaves were filled with music, jokes, and stories of individual heroism. Humans celebrated every small victory against the council forces and turned every defeat into inspiration for greater efforts. They have made this war into entertainment, reported the communications officer. They create songs about battles, tell stories about their warriors, and even broadcast games and competitions during combat operations. The psychological impact on council forces was devastating. They had expected to face a demoralized enemy begging for mercy. Instead, they fought opponents who treated the war as the greatest adventure of their lives. Human soldiers laughed during firefights, sang while under bombardment, and seemed to compete with each other to perform the most impossible heroic acts. As the months passed, cracks began to appear in the Council coalition. Species that had contributed ships and troops to the invasion were starting to question the enormous cost of subduing one small planet. The humans had destroyed nearly half the invasion fleet and showed no signs of weakening. "This is madness," declared Ambassador Krelthar of the Vorthak. "We have spent more resources on this single world than on the last 10 conquests combined. Perhaps we should consider negotiation." But Vexthara refused to consider retreat. The humans had become more than just a threat to galactic order. They had become a challenge to everything the Council represented. If they could defy the mightiest force in the galaxy and survive, what would that mean for Council authority throughout the stars? Unknown to the High Arbiter, her worst fears were already coming true. Deep in space, human radio signals were spreading beyond the solar system, carrying news of the siege to every corner of the galaxy. And on worlds that had been conquered by the Council long ago, people were beginning to listen and remember what freedom had once meant. The siege continued, but now it was unclear who was besieging whom. The end came not with a great battle, but with a simple transmission broadcast across the galaxy. After 8 months of siege, Vexthara received a message from the Council's core worlds. Half of their member species had officially withdrawn from the invasion. Several others were threatening to leave the Council entirely if the war continued. "High Arbiter," the message read, "the cost of this conflict has become unbearable. We are fighting rebellions on 47 worlds. Our trade networks are collapsing. Our authority is questioned everywhere. You must end this war." Vexthara stood in her command center, her crystalline form dim with exhaustion. Around her, the remnants of the once mighty invasion fleet hung in space like broken toys. Of the 10,000 ships that had arrived at Earth, fewer than 6,000 remained. The others had been destroyed, captured, or recalled to deal with uprisings elsewhere. Dr. Kethra approached with the latest intelligence reports. "The humans have established contact with 38 worlds that have declared independence from the Council. They are sharing technology and offering military support to any species that wants to break free from our control. The transformation of the humans from primitive earthbound species to galactic power had happened with breathtaking speed. Their salvaged alien technology had been refined and improved until it surpassed many Council designs. Their ships now patrolled trade routes throughout the sector, protecting worlds that had allied with Earth. More disturbing was the effectiveness of their diplomacy. Human ambassadors had a gift for understanding alien cultures and finding common ground with species that had been enemies for millennia. They offered partnership instead of conquest, cooperation instead of submission. "They are building something new," reported Elder Morden from the Council homeworld. "Not an empire based on force, but an alliance based on choice. Species are joining them voluntarily, and they seem to thrive under human leadership." Commander Zektar reviewed the tactical situation with growing despair. "We cannot win this war through military means. The humans have too many allies now, and our own forces are depleted. Even if we destroyed Earth tomorrow, their movement would continue without them." The truth was even worse than he realized. Human culture had spread throughout the galaxy like a virus of freedom. Their music played on rebel worlds. Their stories inspired resistance movements. Their ideas about individual rights and democratic government challenged the very foundation of Council authority. On Earth itself, the siege had transformed human civilization into something unprecedented. The planet was now covered with underground cities, orbital platforms, and hidden bases. Every human was a potential soldier, engineer, or diplomat. They had become a species designed for war but dedicated to peace. The final blow came when humans achieved their greatest coup yet. Using intelligence provided by alien defectors and technology stolen from Council ships, they had located and captured a Council dreadnought, one of the massive vessels that served as symbols of galactic authority. The ship's capture was broadcast live across human communication networks. The galaxy watched as human engineers, working alongside alien volunteers, took apart the most advanced warship in the Council fleet and studied its secrets. Within days, they were building improved versions using their own industrial methods. "They have our most advanced technology," reported Admiral Korthvan, "but they are not just copying it, they are making it better. Their innovations improve on designs that took us millennia to perfect." The psychological impact was devastating. If humans could capture and improve upon the Council's best ships, what could they not do? More council species began secret negotiations with human representatives, seeking to join what was being called the Free Worlds Alliance. Vexthara made one final attempt to salvage the situation. She sent a diplomatic message to Earth, offering to negotiate a peace treaty that would recognize human independence in exchange for an end to their support of rebel movements. The human response came from Secretary General Martinez, now leader of what they called the United Earth Federation. His message was broadcast to every ship in the Council fleet and transmitted throughout the galaxy. "We appreciate the Council's offer," he said, his voice calm but firm. "However, we cannot accept peace for ourselves while other species remain enslaved. The Free Worlds Alliance stands ready to welcome any world that chooses freedom over subjugation. We will continue to support those who seek independence until every species in the galaxy has the right to choose their own destiny." It was a declaration that changed everything. The humans were not seeking to replace the Council's empire with their own. They were offering to destroy the very concept of galactic empire, replacing it with voluntary cooperation between free species. The message sparked a wave of rebellions that the Council could not suppress. Worlds throughout the galaxy declared independence and requested human support. Trade routes collapsed as species refused to deal with Council-controlled commerce. Even the Council's own military began to question their loyalty to a system that seemed increasingly outdated. Within days of the human message, Vexthara received formal notices from 8 more member species that they were withdrawing from the Council. The mighty civilization that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was crumbling from within. "We have no choice," admitted Elder Morden during an emergency session. "We must withdraw from Earth and negotiate a new relationship with these humans. The old order is ending." Vexthara's final transmission to Earth was perhaps the most difficult message she had ever sent. Her crystalline form flickered with emotions she had never experienced before. Defeat, admiration, and something that might have been hope. "People of Earth," she broadcast, "the Galactic Council formally withdraws all forces from your solar system and recognizes your independence. We underestimated your species. You have shown the galaxy that there are alternatives to the way we have always done things." She paused, struggling with concepts that challenged everything she had believed. "You fought not just for your own freedom, but for the freedom of others. You treated your enemies with kindness while defeating them utterly. You have proven that strength and compassion can exist together." The human response was immediate and characteristic. Instead of demanding reparations or gloating over their victory, they invited Council representatives to Earth for peace negotiations. They offered to share their technology and culture with any Council species interested in joining the Free Worlds Alliance. "We do not seek revenge," Martinez replied. "We seek partnership. The galaxy is vast enough for many different ways of life, but large enough that we should cooperate instead of compete." Over the following months, the galaxy transformed. The Council remained as a loose confederation of worlds that preferred central coordination, but their absolute authority was broken. The Free Worlds Alliance grew rapidly, encompassing dozens of species that had chosen independence. Earth became the unofficial capital of this new alliance, not through conquest, but through invitation. Human diplomats traveled throughout the galaxy, helping to resolve conflicts and establish trade relationships. Their technology improved the lives of billions of beings, while their cultural exports, music, literature, and art, enriched civilizations throughout the stars. The siege of Earth had lasted 8 months. The transformation of galactic civilization that it sparked would last forever. Humanity had proven that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from destroying your enemies, but from showing them a better way to live. Vexthara kept the final human transmission in her personal archives. It was a simple message from an ordinary human soldier, but it captured the spirit that had changed the galaxy. We never wanted to rule over others. We just wanted the right to make our own mistakes and learn from them. Freedom is not something you can give to someone else. It is something they must choose for themselves. We are happy to help anyone who makes that choice. The invasion had failed, but in failing, it had succeeded in ways no one could have imagined. The galaxy was free and humanity had shown the way. 6 months into the siege, the first crack in the Council coalition appeared. It came from an unexpected source, the Zeridian Trade Federation, whose merchant vessels had been providing supplies to the invasion fleet. "We are withdrawing our support," announced Trade Director Vashelin during an emergency council session. This conflict has disrupted commerce throughout the sector. Our trade routes are being attacked by human raiders, and our client species are asking uncomfortable questions about council authority. Vexithara's crystalline form pulsed with angry light. You cannot abandon this operation now. The humans must be stopped before their influence spreads further. But the damage was already spreading, unknown to the council leadership. Human radio transmissions had been picked up by listening posts throughout the galaxy. The content of these broadcasts was unlike anything heard before in council space. Stories of ordinary people fighting the most powerful force in the galaxy and refusing to surrender. Dr. Kethra had been monitoring these transmissions with growing alarm. They are not just communicating among themselves, she reported. They are deliberately broadcasting to anyone who will listen. They tell stories of their battles, share their music, and describe their way of life. It is propaganda, but unlike any we have encountered. The human broadcasts were indeed different. Instead of political speeches or military communications, they shared personal stories. A farmer who had converted his tractor into a weapon. A teacher who had organized her students into a resistance cell. A musician who had written songs that were now being sung in battles across the planet. These stories had an unexpected impact on species throughout council space. Worlds that had been conquered generations ago and had forgotten what independence meant suddenly remembered. The humans were not just fighting for their own freedom, they were showing that resistance was possible. The first uprising began on Keleth Prime, a mining world that had been under council control for 3 centuries. The local population, inspired by human radio broadcasts, seized control of their mining equipment and declared independence. When council peacekeepers arrived to restore order, they found the miners armed with improvised weapons and fighting with a fury reminiscent of human tactics. They are copying human methods, reported the commander of the peacekeeping force. They use mining explosives as weapons, turn their industrial equipment into military hardware, and show the same disregard for personal safety that makes humans so dangerous. More worlds followed. The Altair colonies rebelled after their population heard a human broadcast about freedom being worth any sacrifice. The forest worlds of the Greenleaf Confederation expelled their council overseers after human stories convinced them that even the most powerful enemy could be defeated through determination and creativity. Each rebellion followed the same pattern. Inspired by human broadcasts, local populations would begin resisting council authority, using improvised weapons and tactics copied from Earth's defenders. The council found itself fighting not one war but dozens, as worlds throughout their empire decided that freedom was worth the cost. This is a disaster, admitted Elder Morden during an emergency session. We are deploying more forces to suppress rebellions than we have committed to the Earth siege. These humans have weaponized the very concept of resistance. Meanwhile, the siege of Earth had reached a stalemate. Human defenses had grown stronger with each passing month, while council forces were being stretched thin by uprisings throughout the galaxy. The humans seemed to have unlimited creativity in developing new weapons and tactics. The latest human innovation was particularly disturbing to council forces. They had begun capturing alien soldiers and equipment, but instead of simply imprisoning them, they offered their captives a choice: work with human forces or be returned to their own units unharmed. Many alien soldiers, exhausted by months of fighting an enemy that showed impossible determination, chose to stay. They shared technical knowledge about council weapons and tactics, which the humans immediately incorporated into their own battle plans. They are turning our own forces against us, reported Commander Zektar, not through torture or threats but by showing them kindness and respect. Some of our soldiers are voluntarily sharing intelligence with the enemy. This psychological warfare was more effective than any weapon. Council troops found themselves questioning why they were fighting to subjugate a species that treated prisoners better than many council worlds treated their own citizens. Human camps for captured aliens included medical care, entertainment, and even education opportunities. But the real turning point came when human forces achieved their greatest victory yet. Using a combination of salvaged alien technology and human engineering, they had built a ship capable of faster-than-light travel. It was crude and dangerous by council standards, but it worked. The ship, crewed by volunteers who knew they might not survive the journey, struck at a council supply depot beyond Earth's solar system. The raid was a complete success, destroying millions of tons of equipment and capturing several high-ranking officers. Impossible, breathed Vexithera as she reviewed the battle reports. They should not have interstellar capability. Our intelligence showed no such development. Dr. Kethra pulled up the technical analysis of the human ship. They built it from components salvaged from our own vessels, but combined them in ways our engineers never considered. It is inefficient and unreliable, but it works. They achieved in months what most species take centuries to develop. The psychological impact of the raid was enormous. If humans could strike at Council forces beyond their own solar system, nowhere in the galaxy was safe. More importantly, it proved that human technology was advancing at an impossible rate. The captured Council officers provided another shock. During their debriefing after being returned in a prisoner exchange, they reported that the humans had treated them not as enemies, but as guests. They had been given tours of human facilities, allowed to observe human culture, and even invited to participate in discussions about galactic politics. "They do not hate us," reported Admiral Korthvan, still dazed by his experience. "They see this war as a disagreement between neighbors, not a fight to the death. They want to understand us as much as defeat us." This attitude was baffling to Council leaders. Every other species they had conquered had either surrendered quickly or fought with desperate hatred. The humans fought with devastating effectiveness, but also showed curiosity about their enemies and kindness to their prisoners. The final blow to Council unity came when human broadcasts began, reaching the homeworlds of Council member species. These transmissions were not calls for rebellion, but invitations to dialogue. Humans offered to share their technology and culture with any species interested in peaceful contact. Several Council member species began secret negotiations with human representatives. They were fascinated by human science, art, and philosophy, which seemed to develop through conflict rather than despite it. Human creativity and innovation offered solutions to problems that had puzzled galactic civilization for millennia. "They are offering to share the secrets of their rapid advancement," reported Ambassador Thelkara of the Zeridian Federation. "In exchange, they want only recognition of their independence and the right to represent other species, seeking freedom from Council control." Vexithara realized that the war was slipping away from her. What had begun as a simple conquest had become a galaxy-wide crisis. The humans had not just resisted the Council, they had exposed the weaknesses in a system that depended on fear and overwhelming force. "We can still win," insisted Commander Zektar. "Deploy the planet crackers. Destroy their world entirely," but even this drastic measure was no longer possible. Too many Council species had developed economic and cultural ties with the humans. Too many worlds were watching to see if the mighty Council would resort to genocide to maintain power. For the first time in her existence, Vexithara began to consider the possibility that the humans might actually win this war, not through military victory, but by proving that the Council's way was not the only way to organize galactic civilization. The siege continued, but now it was clear that time was on humanity's side. Every day brought new allies, new technologies, and new proof that even the greatest empire could be challenged by those who refused to surrender their freedom. The galaxy was changing, and the humans were leading that change from their small blue world at the edge of known space.